from day 3, you'll find a few gems. Just last season, guys like Dameon Pierce, Brock Purdy, Tyler Algier, and Isaiah Pacheco emerged as fantasy assets at some point during the season. On today's show, we're going to talk 5 day 3 picks that could end up being, gems in 2023 and beyond. Before we do, I want to make sure you follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. And of course, make sure you jump over to Razzball.com. But today's show, 5 day 3 gems that you need to know, starting right now. Speaking of gems, I mean, at this point, last time I talked to you, I said winners. This day, you're a gem. But my Razzball gem is Gladys L. Tyler. You can follow her on Twitter, Gladys L. Tyler. What's going on, Gladys?
I'm binging Good Morning Show because I just got Apple TV. And so when he says that we will talk about the 5 gems, he means that he's going to talk about the 5 gems, and I'm going to interject probably something that has to do with the morning show that has to do with the players.
She's going to tell me where I'm wrong. I like that. This is great. Exactly. No, this is going to be fun. Honestly, day 3 is a tough one, right? So like a few years ago, I wrote an article. We talked about it on the show about how the hit rates for day 3 picks are low. It's very rare. Most of these guys will never be a factor. So this is kind of a fun exercise. Last year, I just broke down a few guys that really broke out. I think this year it's kind of like, it's just a fun exercise. It's more about opportunities and the teams they land on versus necessarily the talent of the player. But in a lot of cases, Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round pick, emerged, took over for a former 1st round pick. So a lot of fun. But Gladys, do you have any day 3 picks or anything kind of you look for, like a sleeper in these later rounds? Has anything ever stood out to you with this kind of topic?
I'm actually more interested in the undrafted free agents than I am on the day 3 picks. I think if your name gets called, your chances of at least making the team in the practice squad should be relatively good, if the scouting department has any kind of work to it. And of course, with the emergence of like the Brock Purdys and the Russell Wilsons and the Tom Bradys and the Isaiah Pachecos and Tony Pollard, who was I think a 4th round, I don't think it's as unusual now for people to find gems later in the rounds. The Steelers are known for finding wide receivers in the late rounds. San Francisco is known for having late round gems. So I'm not so sure that we should be as amazed and surprised. A lot of it, like you said, I think, 85% of it depends on where they land. It's the landing spot that matters the most for
But we are still going to surprise the people, all right? What she meant to say is our 5 gems are super great. They're going to be super great. You're going to be so surprised. We're excited. Before I jump into the 5, I did put together some guys that I thought were honorable mentions. And one of them we've already talked about is Chase Brown, Cincinnati Bengal 5th round pick, the running back, fifth highest athleticism score among all running backs in this draft, according to Player Profiler. 85th percentile or better in things like 40-yard dash, speed score, burst score, bench press, college dominator. So he's a guy to watch, especially in Dynasty. Elijah Higgins, who's a wide receiver converting to tight end, which I like. Mike McDaniel talked about him in his press conference about how excited he is as a pass catcher, seam stretcher, 6th round pick out of the Miami Dolphins. He had the number 3 athleticism score among wide receivers this year, and he is going to be now a tight end. I like that for that team, especially with the loss of Mike Gesicki. And the last one is Zack Kuntz from tight end for the Jets, 7th round pick, the number 1 athleticism score according to Player Profiler of all time for tight ends. Number 1 of 466. The dude is 6'8", playing for that offense with Aaron Rodgers now. You got guys like Tyler Conklin and, of course, the former Cincinnati guy.
CJ Uzomah.
CJ Uzomah, yes, exactly. So there are veterans there now, but he's a deeper name to monitor there. But let's get into the top 5. At number 5, this one to me, he's got the name. And back-to-back national champion, Stetson Bennett, QB for now the Los Angeles Rams. So Sean McVay has never drafted a quarterback in his time as a head coach with the Rams. The first time he drafts this kid is on the advisement of his QB coach and passing game coordinator. They both say you got to go draft this kid. They do. All right. They get him in the 4th round. He is got, I think he does have a little bit of this like Colt McCoy vibe to him where shorter quarterback, won a bunch in college, might not translate well to the NFL. But Sean McVay is one of the very few coaches where I trust his judgment more than anything. So if Sean McVay gave the okay to draft this kid, you could see kind of like some parallels to him, like Case Keenum, for example, is a type of quarterback where he had some very good seasons with the Minnesota Vikings, made it to the playoffs, made it to the NFC title game. There's things that he did that he ended up emerging. But when you put Sean McVay and you give him guys like Cooper Kupp in that offense, I think that maybe if Matthew Stafford decides to hang it up, there could be a scenario where he is the heir apparent. Now, McVay does have experience with day 3 quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, by the way, drafted by the Washington Commanders way back in the day. Sean McVay was on that staff, and he actually emerged as a pretty solid, quarterback in the NFL. So there is a history behind this. Now, Matthew Stafford's in the contract for 3 to 4 years, but I don't know. I think there was something going on this year with Matthew Stafford, his back issues, all these problems he's had, missed a bunch of time. I don't know how much longer he has to play. So this is a name where I like to monitor. Plus, he comes from a pro-style guy with Todd Monken as his offensive coordinator. So I do like that. It's not like he was in a spread system in college and did all these things in a college-style offense. Todd Monken, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, was his OC the last few years. So Todd Monken had worked with Brandon Weeden and Nick Mullins or other quarterbacks that made it to the NFL. So there has been other parallels there. But overall, any thoughts about Stetson Bennett, his fit with Sean McVay? Do you even think he has a shot at becoming the starter down the road?
Okay, first of all, I want to acknowledge your Todd Monken bro crush that you seem to have from last show. So we have
so bad. It's so bad. It's not good. It's not helping.
If I'm not mistaken, Matthew Stafford and Stetson Bennett are the only 2 quarterbacks currently on the Rams roster. So as far as landing spots go, you couldn't have gotten a better landing spot because, as we know, Matthew Stafford has become somewhat of a delicate flower. And Sean McVay is probably one of the better places to go. And I know that him and Snead have said that the reason that they drafted him, Bennett, was to develop a quarterback, a younger quarterback. So, yes, I think this is a great landing spot for him. I think, however, if he, for some reason, has to play this year, like early on, it would be bad. I think dynasty-wise, he wouldn't be a bad flyer, but I'm not as optimistic that he is that, if Matthew Stafford gets hit and hurt in like the 4th game, Stetson Bennett's going to come in and save the day. I think they will go for a veteran quarterback that is on the free agency.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, not everybody's Brock Purdy, right? So hopefully it doesn't happen to him. Yeah, we'll see. But overall, I just think that I love the fact that he has that great winning time from Georgia, was a dominant quarterback there. But Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, those are the guys that I would trust the most with a quarterback development. And he's already done it with Kirk Cousins. So I like that long term. Let's jump
didn't Bennett get in trouble just recently too for
drunk, disorderly,
knocking on people's doors while he was drunk? Yeah, he's just a kid.
Yeah,
he's just a kid. He's a kid being a kid.
Don't knock on my door, kids. All right, I don't want to deal with you. Stetson, stay in Los Angeles. I know we're both in California, but I don't want you coming down here and knocking on my door, even though I think you're a gem. All right, number 4, Roschon Johnson, the Chicago Bears. So here's the thing that's interesting about Johnson, right? So, of course, he plays behind Bijan Robinson at Texas. Doesn't have a lot of usage because Bijan wasn't the guy. And the irony, though, is Steve Sarkisian, who's the head coach at Texas, comes from an offense when he was OC at Alabama, who, by the way, had guys like Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris, who were number 2 backs in college, who actually emerged and became fantasy assets in the NFL. So it's not unheard of that the college coach who coached in RB2 became an asset in the NFL. So I like that from that standpoint. There's some precedent that even though he wasn't the starter behind a stud in Bijan Robinson, doesn't mean he can succeed in college. So I like that. The other thing that is awesome about him, I found this stat online, and I want to give credit to the right person because, it's a pretty good stat. The new Bears running back, Roschon Johnson, led the college football with missed broken tackles on 35.5% of his carries in 2022. He was also tied for 10th with 4 yards after contact per run. So this guy was breaking tackles, and also when he got hit, was creating more yards after contact. So you got to love that as well. And I brought up earlier about Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris are his comparables on player profilers. So they both had breakouts. Year 1 for Josh Jacobs, year three for Damian Harris. You could see something similar for Johnson with also Devonta Foreman and also Khalil Herbert on at least for the next 2 years for Khalil Herbert, 1 year for Foreman. It might take a year or two for Johnson to emerge, but there is some precedent with Damian Harris that year 3 he could break out from a dynasty perspective. There's plenty of opportunities. David Montgomery's gone, 200 carries, 34 receptions. So you got to like that as well. And this coaching staff has a little mixed reviews. And actually, when I was doing the research, I wanted to look at the NFL. It's Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus. They have some mixed results with rookies, but still there's something here, right? What I like this comparison to is A.J. Dillon. Remember when the Packers drafted A.J. Dillon, but they had Williams and Jones on the team. And then after a year, they let Williams walk, and then A.J. Dillon took over that number 2 role. I can see something very similar happening with Johnson. Foreman's here for a year. He's gone. A.J. Dillon's first season, though, RB 84. Jones and Williams were drafted in 2017 with Luke Getsy with the Packers. Williams emerged that season as the go-to guy. RB 34, still not great. Matt Eberflus, head coach, when he was defensive coordinator with the Colts. Marlon Mack, RB 48 his rookie year. Nyheim Hines, which is more of a passing game back, the RB2 in that offense, RB 28, not too bad in PPR. And then, of course, JT. But JT is JT, second-round pick, finishes RB 6. So there's plenty of scenarios where this coaching staff has allowed the rookie to emerge as the top option. So watch those reports during training camp. Herbert is a 6th-round pick. Foreman's only on a 1-year deal. So if Johnson ends up being the best guy, don't be surprised. Thoughts about Johnson and his fit with the Chicago Bears?
I think that he is more of a dynasty value than he is this year. Again, with Deontay Foreman, with them bringing Deontay Foreman in on 1 year and having Khalil Herbert, this is the team that led the league in the most rushing attempts and the most rushing yards, mainly because of Fields, who probably they're going to limit his rushing stats just to save him. But it's anything. If it's going to be anything, it's going to be a time-shared backfield, and it's a time-shared backfield with 3 different backs. So until Foreman is gone, which I think he will be gone, if Johnston can emerge as somewhat of a reliable option for this year or for the future, then I am more high on him in Dynasty, which I don't play, than I am on Redraft, which I do play.
100% agree there. Let's jump down to number 3. It's Puka Nacua, I think it is. All right. Wide receiver for the Rams, right? So forget about the fact that I can't say this guy's name. I know that sounds bad. It is what it is. But when I started looking into this stuff, by the way, 3 Rams made the list. Why? Because the Rams don't have a lot of depth going on anymore. They traded a lot of draft capital away to get veterans, and now the veterans are not really on offense anymore. They traded away Allen Robinson, and that's key here, right? So here's a stat nugget from Jeremy at Popes FFH on Twitter, okay? Within the last 4 draft classes, okay, 11 of 123 players had a career yards per route run in college of 3 or more, okay? Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Jackson Smith-Njigba, first-round pick, okay? Those are some of the names. You know who's else on that list? This guy. This guy is on that list, a 5th rounder who goes to the Rams, who, by the way, outside of Cooper Kupp, they have Van Jefferson, which we'll see. I talked about him the other day. I do like I love the option of a number 2 in this offense. So if Van Jefferson emerges, is great. If not, and then Ben Skoranek, who's a former 7th-round pick. Okay. But when you look at Luka, his player comps, Stevie Johnson and Brian Hartline are the 2 guys that pop up. Both of those guys broke out in years 3 and 4. So his comps have shown that those type of players do end up breaking out, which I like to see from player profiler as well. There's a lot of opportunities in this offense, 161 available opportunities according to my analysis with the trade of Allen Robinson. And plus, with Matthew Stafford healthy, you've got to assume this team's going to throw a little bit more than they did in years past. Van Jefferson, by the way, after Cooper Kupp, only has 1 year left on his contract, okay? Ben Skoranek, 2 years. Tutu Atwell, another wide receiver, 2 years. So within the next 2 years, really the only guy that's set in stone is Cooper Kupp. So that's also good for his long-term outlook. The history with rookies with the coaching staff with Sean McVay, not the greatest, but let's just talk through them. Tutu Atwell and Ben Skoranek in 2021, both finished outside the top 100 wide receivers. Van Jefferson, same thing in 2020. Wide receiver 120, okay? Josh Reynolds, wide receiver 129. We're starting to see a theme here. Not really relevant at all, but there's something there. But the one guy that did emerge was Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp in wide receiver 29 his rookie season in 2017 when he was with Sean McVay. However, the one thing I've been hearing a lot about this kid, he did get a decent amount of rushing attempts, and they said there could be a role for him like they used Robert Woods on end around, so I do like that as well. His offensive coordinator / head coach in college did produce one NFL wide receiver, Tim Patrick, Denver Broncos. So I do like that. He actually played very well in the NFL. Any thoughts about Puka?
Okay, so the Rams have started calling him their discount Debo, which means they plan to use him like Debo Samuel. I think out of the ones that we've talked to so far, he has the best opportunity to play this year and to be somewhat relevant depending on the matchup this year. He's not extremely athletic. He's not extremely fast, but he does everything well. Like he's not elite, but he does everything well according to his draft profile. And I believe that Sean McVay is going to find a way to use him in that system along with Cooper Kupp. I think he outshines Atwell, and I think he will outshine Skoranek, but I mean, that's kind of a low bar, I guess. So I think out of the ones that we've talked about so far, I'm going to go with discount Debo as the best option for redraft late round pick.
I like that. And I agree too. 100% agree on that one. Number 2 is Justin Shorter, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. I've come to a lot of revelations over the last few days. And one of them is that when I did this workup, Shorter, I came a little bit shorter on my like for him. Bad puns, stay for the bad puns. You come for the analysis, stay for the bad puns, folks. All right. So the thing that's interesting about Shorter, though, when he was heading into college, I thought this was another fun stat nugget, and I apologize. I did not write the person's name down. That's on me. But Justin Shorter in the 2018 high school class was the number 1 wide receiver coming out of high school, ahead of Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle, which is, I think, pretty interesting. So the kid had a lot of talent coming out of high school, still gets drafted in the NFL, played at Florida, by the way, with Anthony Richardson, who is a good player, but Anthony Richardson was a raw quarterback. It was really his first time ever getting starts at Florida last year. So there's something there. His player comps are, average, to say the least. Matt Collins and Brandon LaFell. Don't jump out at you right away, but both guys did have some relatively nice breakout years. Matt Collins broke out last year in his 6th season, though, with 9.1 PPR points per game, which isn't amazing. But Brandon LaFell had a great year in his 5th year at 14.2. Now, his measurables are pretty elite. He was 4th highest athleticism score according to Player Profiler. So he's got elite measurables there. There's plenty of opportunities in Buffalo as well. 174 according to my analysis. That's 14th most, so like middle of the pack. But also when you look at Justin Shorter, his quickest path is if Gabriel Davis leaves. So Gabriel Davis only has 1 year left on his contract. Really, it's Stephon Diggs' offense. But Stephon Diggs said some things this year. It seemed like Diggs was getting a little ruffled around the feathers this offseason. But I think he's going to stay the long term. Josh Allen's too good. But that could be something down the road. We're not sure. But Gabriel Davis, if he leaves, Shorter can immediately jump in. But he's going to have to face off with Khalil Shakir, who's a fellow 5th-round pick. You have Dawson Knox, who, by the way, just signed a brand-new contract, 4-year deal, but does have an out after 2 seasons. But the biggest one, I think, when I was doing this research was Dalton Kincaid. And I think a lot of people don't realize this, but Dalton Kincaid is a problem for the wide receivers because the Bills can now run a lot more 2 tight end personnel offenses in passing situations. And I think with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, you'll see that more. And I think you're going to see problems for Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, and Justin Shorter getting on the field, especially if they value Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox ahead of those guys, which they probably do because Knox has produced a lot more than Shakir, and you could argue that he's right up on par with Gabe Davis. But another reason why I bring that up too, and I said this on a previous show, is that the Panthers in 2015 with Cam Newton, this is basically the Panthers. Ken Dorsey and also Sean McDermott were on that coaching staff. They both went that season. Cam Newton was the MVP. They went to the Super Bowl, They ran the second most dropbacks and pass attempts in the NFL with 2 tight ends on the field. So it's not unheard of that they would do something like this. The history for rookies for this coaching staff isn't great either. Khalil Shakir, wide receiver 133. Gabriel Davis was the wide receiver 55. And Zay Jones, way back in the day, 2017, wide receiver 85. So rookie seasons have not really been good for these guys as well with this coaching staff. The college coaches that he coach guys like N'Keal Harry, Kadarius Toney, Kyle Pitts, and Van Jefferson. So a little mix there as well. Quick thoughts about Justin Shorter and his fit in Buffalo.
I think Shorter is the Gabe Davis 2. I think that for now they'll use him in special teams. I know that Bean has gone on record as saying that he wants to keep 6 receivers on his roster. So I'm not sure if he's counting 2 tight ends and 4 wide receivers or 6 wide receivers and 2 tight ends. But whatever, it's going to be a very crowded competition after Stephon Diggs. So I don't see him with Gabe Davis there. Him and Gabe Davis are the same player, basically. And I don't see him getting the red zones and the deep threats as long as Davis is there. So for now, I think maybe a flyer on Dynasty. I would see how it looks in preseason. But I think he's going to be a special team player for the first season. I think he's going to be their gunner, actually, because their last gunner sucked. But I wouldn't draft him in redraft. And like I said, in Dynasty, I might take a late flyer on him, depending on how late I'm drafting in Dynasty and how Gabe Davis looks.
I agree. I'm out. I am out on Justin Shorter. Sorry, Justin. I like you. I'm sure you're a great kid, but my research has decided me. I'm going to go other directions this season. Anyway, Zack Evans is number 1. Los Angeles Rams running back out of Ole Miss, 6th-round pick. Woo! This one was fun, by the way. All right, so Zack Evans, by the way, led all running backs in college last year in breakaway run rate per attempt at 18.2%. So 15 yards or more. 18% of his carries were 15 yards or more. So this guy is explosive, okay? The other thing that's interesting about him, too, is player comps are legit. So Sony Michel, who was a first-round pick, and Marlon Mack as well. Marlon Mack, I know Marlon Mack doesn't sound like a great player, but in 2018 and 19, this guy was a legit RB2 for fantasy football. Sony Michel, first-round pick, never really panned out. But ironically, the thing I liked about the Sony Michel thing was that the Rams went and got Sony Michel at one point, and they gave him workhorse usage for a few weeks, and that was fun. You know, hey, Sony, come over here. So I like that little parallel. Zach Moss also has, Zach Evans, my apologies, also has like above average measurables, 14 of 43 athleticism according to Player Profiler. There are opportunities, 70 vacated by Darrell Henderson, but here comes the dynasty portion of this, okay? Cam Akers, I think, is the guy this year, 100%. Year 1, it's Cam Akers. Cam Akers is a free agent this year, okay? The Rams are in no position. If you learned one thing about the Rams, they are not signing anybody right now because they're trading away Jalen Ramsey, they're trading away Allen Robinson. They are over the cap and they have nothing. They cannot re-sign guys right now. So Cam Akers, whether he is the best running back in football, I don't even think this guy's coming back. Maybe on the franchise tag, maybe. But as soon as next year, Cam Akers will be gone. Then you have Kyron Williams, who, 3 years left, but who cares? I think there's a real opportunity for him to emerge in Dynasty as soon as 2024, and I love that for him. Rookies under the Sean McVay as running backs have had some decent success. Cam Akers, year 1, 9.4 PPR points per game. Darrell Henderson, 2019, was the RB 98, which isn't great. But year 2 and year 3, these guys have emerged. Darrell Henderson has breakout in year 3. Cam Akers in year 3 as well. But overall, I think there's been a lot of parallels for this coaching staff to allow guys to develop after year 1 and immediately take over. So I like that. Finally, Lane Kiffin was his coach in college. Devin Singletary, Damian Harris, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, and TJ Yeldon are all notable players who emerged from that offense in college who had some fantasy value in the NFL. Quick thoughts about Zack Evans.
Zack Evans is a boom or bust runner. Like, he's explosive, but he does have durability issues. He does have a slight fumbling concerns. Sean McVay has gone on record as saying that Evans' skill set is a complement to Cam Akers. So I see him using him this year as who knows? I mean, like we thought Cam Akers was gone last year, and then Evans, all of a sudden he becomes like the workhorse. So who knows what Sean McVay is thinking? But I actually would draft Evans like in round 12 in a redraft if he was still on the board, because I think that he is going to get more usage, or at least a 50-50 running back or a 60-40 running back with Cam Akers. And he had a 3rd or 4th round grade, and he dropped because of character issues, which I'm not even sure what that means, because I don't know. Stetson Bennett's like with his pants down knocking on doors, and he doesn't have character issues. So I'm not sure what Zach Evans' character issues are. So I would draft him in redraft, and I definitely would draft him in Dynasty, the way that McVay likes to use his running backs. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
The Rams' key for final nugget here is that their offensive line needs to get healthy. 3 of their 5 starters are coming back from injury. Then they drafted a 2nd-round pick at guard. They really, Rob Havenstein is the only guy that was consistent last year and healthy. So that offensive line, if they don't get healthy and right, it's going to be another disastrous year for the Rams. All right, that's all we got. 5 day 3 sleepers from the NFL draft. Future stars in LA. Well, I think Gladys agreed with 2 out of 3. That's pretty good. I'll take 2 out of 3 out of LA. Justin Shorter, we love you. Appreciate you being part of the show. Prove us wrong, my friend. And Roschon Johnson, by the way, I think that kid's going to be really good in about 2 to 3 years. So I'm excited about these day 3 gems. Gladys, before we close out the show, tell the people what you got upcoming at Razzball or wherever they can find your content.
Razzball, I have one that dropped, the defensive East, and next week I will have the defensive West article. So I know that you guys don't think defenses are sexy, but they are, because you need to know the good defenses so you don't play your offenses against them. So you need to get on those defensive articles and get on them now and hard.
All those words fit way too well together that I cannot comment for obviously HR reasons. So that's all we got, folks. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. Go follow us across the board on YouTube, IG, and TikTok at Razzball Fantasy. And then go over to Razzball.com and check out all those sexy defensive articles written by Gladys L. Tyler. You can follow her on Twitter at Gladys L. Tyler. Thank you for joining once again. We are.
Bye.